Hockey,
Tennis.
golf, tennis.
That'd be a smart idea though, because not a lot of people play those sports.
Hockey's expensive though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$200 skates, you break a stick,
So
that's
golf-
$200
golf is
bucks.
expensive.
Or get a hockey rink, so I know how much all that costs, I just can't afford to buy it.
Hockey and golf is ridiculously expensive.
And there's less people on the team, so there's less scholarships anyway.
Less scholarships, less people on the team. Yep. So if you had a private school and it's got a bunch of rich kids, and you got a bunch of rich kids applying for scholarships based on grades, and you're like, okay, but they're rich. Anyways, I'll give them a free ride because they're rich. They're just like me, because I'm rich. And then you got some kids that start applying for the scholarships from the inner city of Flint for sports, and they're obviously better than your athletes. Do you let them in?
They have to go through writing papers.
It's hard to get in.
It's harder.
It's harder. But don't you want your basketball game to be sweet?
They would
Yeah, but
lower
people
their
are stuck in
academic.
social classes.
They would lower their academic standards for the athletes to let them in.
They would lower their academic standards for athletes to let them in. They might. You guys remember who Chris Webber is?
Yep.
Do you know where he went to high school?
Detroit Country Day.
Oh my gosh, Detroit Country Day. Do you know how expensive it
It's
is?
expensive.
How do you get in there?
Basketball. And he knew a booster.
He knew a booster.
And
I'm
he was-
glad you brought that up
He was
because...
wealthy growing up too though. Yeah, he grew up upper middle class.
You think so?
Jalen Rose was poor as dirt. And he couldn't get in there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Weber grew up in Rochester Hills, didn't he?
Jalen Rose?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
downtown.
Weber, wasn't he
Yeah.
like downtown Rochester Hills?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing.
So Chris
That's
Webber...
buku bucks.
Chris Webber went to Detroit Country Day, which is a rich, very rich school, which is like where the Illich kids go. It's like super rich. And Jalen Rose went to a public school, and they played each other in the finals. What was their common life chance? What did they have in common?
Well, they both were very good athletes.
They're both very good athletes. That was their common life chance. And what was uncommon about them?
Different.
Financial status.
Financial status, different schools. And what was the result for both of them?
Essentially the same.
Essentially the same. So, does it even matter what school you go to? Because in their case, one was poor, one was rich, one went to a good school, one went to a bad school, and then in the end, because they shared one thing in common, they had the result that was the same. So it doesn't even matter if you're rich or poor or what school you go to, because you can end up the same and all rich anyways. Is that true?
It depends on how much you want.
Depends on the common interest, or the common life.
Which, yes, it does. And in their case, it was.
You know, they're athletic, or
Yeah.
in fact they were athletes.
So, but there's got to be American athletes that are in the inner city of Flint and they don't make it to the NBA. You know? Why not? Where do they end up?
I think it's just
Working
about
online.
choices that you make. You either decide that you want to go down a certain path or you don't. So if you decide that you want to go down the upper class path, you have to make choices to get there.
Who helps you make your choices? How do you come up with your choices?
If you have a mentor or a parent that is very active in your life,
Where are all the parents in Flint? I'm cracking in jail.
They were.
yeah.
And they're not working either, yeah. Yeah. So where are those potential superstar athletes in Flint going?
Nowhere. Jail.
Because they have no
To
influence.
jail, to the crack houses. It's, yeah. And I'm overstating this because I want you to write your papers on these sorts of things. We can talk and talk. I'm getting your wheels oiled or whatever the cliche is. But here's the difference. Our discussion now is meant to get you to start thinking. Your paper that you turn in cannot say, I think that kids in Flint are poor and their life chances suck and so they're going to go to jail. You need to have some research behind it. You need to get some research behind it. The whole fried chicken thing that I talked about, if I turned in that paper, it would be a flunking paper unless I was like references, citations, and all this stuff.
So you're saying you want, this is a side note, you said you want research, so does that mean you want a bibliography?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
I didn't know if I was going off topic, but you
No,
said
no,
that.
I'm super glad you brought that up because I always forget what I cover in what class.
Okay.
And I haven't covered that in this class. But I already had you raise your hands to see how many people in here were freshmen. And that's very important to answering that question, because in high school, where did you do your research at? Library. Thank you. Computer. Library. So research in high school meant to go to the library and find books. So if I was doing, I'll keep going at the fried chicken thing. If I was doing fried chicken research in high school, where would I go? To the library. He already said I would go to the library. To online, I'd Google it or something like that. So I'd have 5 pages based on research from the library and from Google or whatever. Now you're in college. Where else do you do research?
The online archives.
Yeah, but that's just a way of doing better library research. Where else do you do research for this class?
Scholarly journal.
Social research.
Yes, but that's also more library research that I'll tell you how to do later on.
Interviews.
Yeah, that's one of
You
them.
like go where it's happening.
Yes, yeah. It's only, it said social research or something like that? Yeah, so sociology research is interviews, surveys, focus groups, etc. So when you write your final 10-page paper, you might have 5 pages of this scholarly journal said historically fried chicken through this book in the library said that blah blah blah, food, this, that, preparation, yada yada yada, and a medical journal said that it's bad for you and causes cholesterol. Great, 5 pages of your paper. Then you go, because you're now in college and you're doing research, and you go and you start interviewing people, or you stand on the corner and you start doing surveys for Saginaw Valley kids, and you stop somebody and you ask them what they think about fried chicken and how often they eat it. And I probably don't want you to do this, but you could stand out there with a scale and you could weigh them. And then you could say, I did a survey with 50 people, and 20 of them hated fried chicken, and their average weight was 110 pounds. And 30 of them love fried chicken and go to Popeye's chicken like 3 times a day, even for breakfast, and their average weight was 250 pounds. You could write this in your paper. I don't recommend going out there with the scale. It's hard. I might do that for mine, but not for you guys. So back to sample size. Now we're talking about doing our own research, doing interview surveys, focus groups, etc. So I want to write this paper. Remember what I said about argument contains 2 perspectives. I want to do this paper about what we talked about, fried chicken, historically, and America, and lower class, and people eat fried chicken because they need to, somebody said, improve the taste of food. So I'm going to do my paper on lower class eating habits or something like that. Now I'm out on the campus. I'm setting you up for a wrong answer too, by the way, if you're paying attention. Now I'm on campus and I'm on the corner. I'm doing a paper about lower class eating habits. Who am I going to stop to take my survey?
We're all for college, so we can't do that lower class.
Yeah, the same people,
You're not in the right environment to
Yeah.
get that information.
most people are like, not everybody is like, some people have loans and a lot of people have financial aid. Things we don't know.
Okay.
It'd be hard to do that kind of study because it would take some sort of judgment in your mind. You would have, unless you could see what they made, what their family made on an annual basis, then there would be no way to really formulate a good way to separate the lower class unless you knew those numbers.
Very well put for this discussion. He said it would take some type of judgment unless you knew how much money they had, and then you could separate them based on data. So here's what we don't have. Here's what would be terrible if you did. If you selectively chose your sample and did some sort of judgment call and only pulled either a gender or a race or people with clothes that you could tell were really ratty and you thought they were poor, if you did some type of selective sampling for that particular research paper, it would be terrible. So what would be better is if you just randomly sample, random sample, get that in your head, random, you want a random sample, and you would just go out there and you would survey everybody who walked by at noon. And you would ask them, what? What did you want to find out? The last part of what you said. Only if you knew
How much money they made or.
exactly. So you would ask them that. You'd first ask them what they liked, what they thought about fried chicken, and then secondly, you'd put it on an anonymous survey. What's your annual income, or how much do your parents make, or something like that. And you would do that at noon. What else would you then do? You'd go back at 6 p.m. Because you don't want to just interview the people that get up and go to early class at noon. You also want to get the people that get drunk at night, sleep in, and only go to 7 p.m. classes because they're all lazy and they have no social life, like this class. Just teasing. To make sure you're awake. But you definitely would have to go at different times, different days. You don't separate a race, a gender, or someone you think's poor. You just do random sampling, and then you would ask them the questions to get at the data that you want to find. You can't, based on your theory and your hypothesis, you cannot craft proof to prove what you want to prove. You can't do that. That's very unethical. You just have to gather data and then see if it proves or disproves your hypothesis. Your hypothesis could be that all lower class people like fried chicken. You may find out that all rich people like fried chicken. I don't know. You might find that out. And then you'd have to write in your conclusion why that could possibly be true. I don't know. Maybe because Saginaw is where the Colonel Sanders is from, and his whole family goes to school here, and so all rich people like fried chicken. I don't know. Who knows? They have all common life chance of being the Colonel Sanders' grandkids. Okay, so I'm getting ready to break. I'm trying to think of a place to leave off, but I can't. So we'll just all take a break and reconvene about 10 till. Go get your Starbucks or whatever. And we'll come back and we'll talk more about this sort of stuff and how we are going to go into the first essay, which is due in a week.
Can you go back up?
Applying for scholarships based on grades, and you're like, okay, but they're rich. Anyways, I'll give them a free ride because they're rich. They're just like me, because I'm rich. And then you got some kids that start applying for the scholarships from the inner city of Flint for sports, and they're obviously better than yours. Golf is ridiculously expensive.
And there's less people on the team, so there's less scholarships anyway.
Less scholarships, less people on the team. Yep. So if you had a private school and it's got a bunch of rich kids, and you got a bunch of rich kids,
They would lower their academic standards for athletes to let them in.
they would lower their academic standards for athletes to let them in. They might. You guys remember who Chris Webber is?
Yep.
Do you know where he went to high school?
Detroit Country Day.
Oh my gosh, Detroit Country Day. Do you know how expensive that is?
It's expensive.
For athletes. Do you let them in?
They have to go through writing papers.
It's hard to get in.
It's harder.
It's harder. But don't you want your basketball game to be sweet?
They would
Yeah, but
lower
people
their
are stuck in
academic.
social classes.
Hockey,
Tennis.
golf, tennis.
That'd be a smart idea though, because not a lot of people play those sports.
Hockey's expensive though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$200 skates, you break a stick, that's $200 bucks.
Expensive.
Or get a hockey rink, so I know how much all that costs, they just can't afford